On Wednesday, July 23, 2014, in an Arizona prison, the death sentence was carried out on Joseph Wood, who had been convicted of murdering his girlfriend and her father in 1989. At 1:53 p.m., he was given a lethal injection, which was supposed to render him unconscious within 10 minutes and then cause his death from cardiac arrest. However, something went wrong. At 2:05 p.m., Wood began to gasp for air. According to Michael Kiefer, a correspondent for the Arizona Republic newspaper, the convict took approximately 660 gasping breaths before a doctor pronounced him dead at 3:49 p.m. "It was hard to watch. He was like a fish out of water," described another reporter. "He gasped for air and wheezed for an hour and 40 minutes," Wood's attorney noted. The drama that unfolded in the Arizona prison is not the first case where the execution turned into a near-death torture for the convict. For example, a similar incident occurred on April 30th in Oklahoma. A lethal injection was administered to 38-year-old inmate Clayton Lockett at 6:23 p.m. 10 minutes later, he was still showing signs of life, with his body convulsing. 13 minutes after the execution began, Lockett lifted his head and started to mumble something. Ultimately, the execution was called off. However, the convict still died 40 minutes later, not from the lethal injection but from a massive heart attack. Lethal injection is the primary method of execution in the United States. Out of the 27 states where criminals are executed, it is considered the preferred method in 26. The injection was intended to be the most painless execution method, a humane alternative to hanging, shooting, and the electric chair. In reality, this method has been controversial for many years, with some considering it one of the most agonizing. In 2017, convicted murderer Thomas Arthur even requested to be shot instead of receiving the injection. The injection itself can consist of either one drug or three, the latter being more common. For example, Arkansas uses midazolam, vecuronium bromide, and potassium chloride. Each of these drugs is administered in doses capable of killing a person on their own, but each substance has its drawbacks, and their sequential administration is supposed to mutually compensate for these. In other states, components may be replaced with functional analogs, but the overall principle remains unchanged. Before the injection, the condemned is strapped to a gurney and catheters are inserted into veins in both arms. First, midazolam, a sedative, is administered with the goal of rendering the convict unconscious. Within a few seconds, when the blood carries the substance to the brain, the person loses consciousness. However, according to some reports, the convict can wake up in the middle of the execution. An Associated Press reporter who observed the execution of Kenneth Williams in 2017 stated that despite the administration of midazolam, the criminal convulsed and strained against the restraining straps about 20 times. Inducing unconsciousness in the condemned is considered essential because the other two drugs are supposed to cause very unpleasant sensations. Vecuronium bromide is used in surgery to relax muscles so that their contractions do not interfere with the operation. If the condemned remained conscious, they would feel their limbs becoming paralyzed one by one. When the paralysis reached the chest, it would become difficult to breathe. If conscious, you would feel like you are suffocating, said Stephen Morley, a toxicologist at Britain's Leicester Royal Infirmary. Finally, when the person is unconscious and paralyzed, their heart is still beating. Therefore, potassium chloride is administered. Without anesthesia, this process would be extremely painful. It is believed that this drug feels like liquid fire spreading through the veins. Without muscle paralysis, potassium chloride would cause severe convulsions. Finally, when the drug reaches the heart, it disrupts the balance of potassium and sodium ions necessary for the heartbeat. The pulse becomes erratic and eventually stops. If the entire procedure goes according to plan, the person should die within 10 minutes of the execution start. If not, For example, if the person regains consciousness, the staff closes the curtains in front of the observer's window and tries to return to the protocol procedure. In the U.S., the death penalty is highly controversial, with some people strongly opposed to it. Pharmaceutical companies do not want to damage their reputations and often refuse to supply components for executions, making it a challenging task for prison staff to prepare a lethal injection. In 2016, it was reported that 20 of the largest drug manufacturers, including Pfizer, categorically oppose such use of their products. Therefore, lethal injections do not have a consistent composition, and executions often rely on whatever drugs are available. Additionally, it is difficult to find doctors to develop protocols for executions using new drugs. In 2010, a court memorandum from Ohio officials stated that they had failed to find a single medical professional for this purpose, as participation in executions contradicts medical ethics and can lead to expulsion from the medical community. Despite such fierce opposition from some individuals, the death penalty is generally supported in American society. According to a 2021 poll, 60% of the population supports the death penalty for murder, with 27% strongly supporting it. Meanwhile, 40% are opposed, and 15% identify as staunch opponents. Besides the United States, lethal injections are also used in China and Vietnam. In China, this execution has its own specifics, since it is carried out in so-called death vans. The vehicle is equipped with an execution chamber with a metal bed that physically restrains prisoners while lethal injections are administered. Execution vans have been used in China since 2003. Lethal injections were legalized in 1997. Lethal injections are now the most prominent form of capital punishment in China and, in some provinces, are the only legal form of capital punishment. A converted 24-seater bus, the execution van has the appearance of an ordinary police van without any markings indicating its purpose. There is a windowless cell in the back of the car, where the execution takes place. There are several cameras in the front of the van that transmit the signal to closed-circuit televisions. If desired, you can make a video recording. The bed itself moves away from the wall to which the convict is tied. The syringe is installed in the bracket and the policeman initializes the injection by pressing the button.